session is being recorded. So hello everyone. Again, like today is a great day to learn Java. I hope you all can hear me. If not, feel free to tell me about it. Um, any questions, unmute yourself and feel free and ask. So next we'll see is my screen from where we left previously, which is we were running this Java program and we were creating a person class. So all right. Okay, perfect. I'll try to speak louder. Maybe I'll put my earphones on and that helps. Let's see if that works. All right. Is this better? I think this is better. Awesome. Thanks, Zane. So let's start from where we left previously. We are looking at constructors, and we did some sample programs. Get ready to write some more programs today. So what we learned in the last session was constructors don't really construct an object. They are a mechanism provided by Java to initialize the objects and their member variables to a known value. So Java calls constructors, and that's how it initializes those variables. So inside those constructor implementation, we write our own logic how to deal with those initializations. An object can be created using a new, they're calling a new. As an example, like a person Harry is new person, so that creates an object of name Harry, or type person. Constructors can have 0 or more parameters. We saw that how 0 parameter constructors are default constructors, and even if we don't write it, Java writes it for us when it compiles the code. And of course, constructors also allow values to be passed, which means you can, when you create an object, you can pass some initial values to your parameters if you want. So what are parameters? Okay, we'll get to that. So okay, we'll look at it. Let's complete our summary and then we'll dive into it. Constructors can be overloaded, which means you can have more than one definition of constructor in your class, provided they have different signature, which means combination of, well, not combination, but you can have constructors with different parameters, and that way you can have multiple constructors and you have overloaded them essentially. Constructors have no return type. So constructors don't return anything like traditional methods in Java, which we'll be seeing in the next section of today's session. But constructors don't return anything. So that is a difference between constructor and a method or a function. They don't have any return type. Constructors have exactly the same name as enclosing class name. So when you look at a class, and if you find a method by the same name as the class name, it is constructor of that class. So that's easy to identify. Constructors can be private, but AP requires only public constructors. So it's good to know, but we'll be dealing with only public constructors. Constructors can be chained. That is, one constructor can call another constructor. So we can reuse our multiple definition of constructors if we have in a class. So what are parameters? So let's look at the person class. I hope you all have this in your project still. So we created a person class, and we have this constructor which is the default constructor because it doesn't have any parameter. So parameter is is the list of variables that can be passed to a method or a constructor. So in this case, if you look at the second, I hope you all can see my screen, right? So if you look at this person constructor here, you'll see it has two parameters, first and the last name, and those parameters are of type string. So when you call such a method or a constructor which takes parameters, then you provide something to it. You provide a first name as Joe and last name is regular. So that's what parameter is. Is list of arguments that you can pass to a method or a constructor. Does that help? Awesome. So previously, what we looked at was we looked at how anyone can create a Joe class and could set whatever they felt like in to its member variables. Like dates could be negative, or months could be beyond 12, which is not right. So we decided we'll fix that those problems, because we don't want, like, all the classes that we write as a Java developer, we don't want anyone to abuse them or hack them or not use it in the way that we want them to use. So we wanted to create some safeguard to it. So what we did previously is, using constructors, we made sure that all our member variables, they start with some default value. So it means we'll not see first name or last name being null printed. So if user forgets to set a first name or last name, it won't be null. It will be an empty string, which is different than null. Null means there's no reference to any value whatsoever, whereas empty string means no value has been assigned. That's one difference. So we saw that we can initialize our variables with some pre-initial, like, values which are right, because we control it. We also saw that user can provide us first name and last name as part of constructor creation, and we create an object with those two things pre-assigned to it. So when you run this program, you'll see that we provided first and the last name as part of constructor, and we did not set any other member variables of Joe. And when you run this program, you'll observe that the first name and the last name is actually what we provided in the constructor. So we didn't have to set any member variable explicitly. Constructor took care of it. So we did that, but there's still a problem. You all can open your code and we can write something together and experiment with it. So we did make sure that Joe has valid dates. Valid dates, what I mean is valid default dates. So user can still go ahead and change the, let's say, month of birth to be maybe like 15, which is not valid, right? It's an invalid month. You cannot have more than 15. But it looks like user can still do it. And if you run the program, you'll see the date of birth here, the month being 15, which is not right. So we still have some problem. We couldn't, like last session, we didn't fix all of them. So we'll continue working on our solution, and we'll try to make sure that no one is able to do these wrong use of classes that we write. So the first step of the solution was to have constructors so that our member variables have some default initial values. The second step of the solution is something called as access modifiers. What are access modifiers, right? So to understand that, let's modify our code and just write private before every member variable. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do it together. Go to person class, and here where all the member variables are declared, just write private space before declaring them. You can copy paste the same thing for all member variables. Once you've done this, save the change and try to run the program. Oops, we got a problem here. Uh, do you all are you all able to run it?
Yeah, I got the same errors as you.
Similar, right?
Same.
Awesome. Okay. Anyone still making changes or not getting these errors? I think we all are on the same page here. Okay. So what does error say? Error says, well, in my case, I have this one extra line. Month of birth has private access, right? First name has private access. The error is saying like everything that we are trying to access of Joe has a private access, which means now the program is not allowing us to change these things, neither update the value nor read the value, right? So what did we achieve? We just by making everything private, we achieved that now anyone who's going to use our person class, they cannot change the member variables just by directly accessing them, right? So let's fix the problem. We'll delete that one line and then comment out the remaining lines, right? So comment out the remaining lines and you can run the program. Now it won't complain. But we are back to square one, which is we are creating an object, but we're not doing anything with it. We're not able to access anything from it. So as an example, if you just type Joe dot, you'll see there's nothing available. You can't access any member variable. So that's a problem. So we solved one problem and ran into another, right? Because now we can't print person's name, date of birth, and address at all, because simply because we have made uh, all uh, all our member variables as private. So what private means is they are not accessible from the class object, right? So okay, we solved one problem. We have another problem at hand. Let's see what we can do about that. Uh, okay, so we all did this. What happens when you compile it? We saw we get an error. So this brings us to this topic of access modifiers in Java. So there are four of them. First is public, properties that can be changed, read by anyone outside the class. So we were seeing like how we were doing Joe dot first name, and we could assign any value to it. Because it was well, it was not public, but public would have let us do that. There's another access modifier called protected. What protected does is you can access those member variables only from a subclass or within same package, like within from any class within the same package. Now the question is, what is package? So in Java, it is very beautifully organized. So closely related implementations or classes, they are all put into one folder in a directory, and because they do some similar stuff, so they all put in one directory, and that directory is called package. So protected access modifier means that if you have a class in a directory, then all classes in that same directory will be able to access that member variable. Third is package private. Properties can be changed, read only by classes declaring it, and all classes within the same package. So what is the difference between protected and package private? Difference is package private is not accessible by subclass. It is only accessible within the same package, which is within the same directory. Whereas protected is not only accessible within the same directory, but if there is a subclass in a different directory, your member variable will be accessible from that subclass as well. And finally, private is properties can be changed or read only within the class they are declared in. So we just saw this is we declared everything as private and we were not able to use it from outside of the person class. So this is good to know. It is used very much in Java programming. Things that you don't want anyone else to access from your class, you declare it as private, and everything else as public or protected and packaged private. So package private is default. Before writing, like we just added private before our member variables, right? So before that, it didn't have any access modifier. So when that's the case, when there is no explicit modifier, then it is the package private by default. Yeah. So summary is, um, we have four places from where we can access our member variables. Class, from within a class, from within a package which is within a folder, from within a subclass, and from the outside world. So in our case, that object, the program was the outside world, whereas person class was like within the class. So if it is public, you can access it from everywhere. Protected is from within the class, package, as well as subclass. Package, which is default, is from within a class and package, but not from different packages, even if it is subclassed. And private is only from within the class, from nowhere else, right? So this gives power to programmers to control their visibility of objects, right? So it must be, power is easy to be abused, so it must be used with caution, right? Um, and now we'll build upon this. So what we did is we declared our properties private because we didn't want people to change them just by just by themselves, because they can assign any value to it. But that has led us to a different problem: is now we can't read them. So is there a hope? Uh, no surprises. There is hope, and that brings us to solution. Now, step number 3, called methods. Right? In some programming languages, methods are also referred as functions. So you can interchangeably call it a function or a method. It's one and the same thing. In Java, mostly, people call it method rather than a function. So what are Java methods? By definition, methods are procedural abstraction that allows programmers to use it by knowing what a method does, even if they do not know how the method was written. What it means is, it is a mechanism, a function is a mechanism to hide the complexity of what that function is supposed to do. As an example, let's say, you want to find the square root. Now, the way to find a square root could be a multi-step process, but someone can just call the function square root, and they don't have to worry about how the square root is being found. Like found, what they get is the square root of the number, right? So that's the power of abstraction: is you hide the complexity. The user can freely use your function without knowing how you're doing all the magic within it. So all Java methods have this structure. It's common in all Java methods. A Java method would typically look something like such. So see how add numbers, people don't have to know how you're adding X and Y. What they'll get is just a result, and the return statement X plus Y is our domain, and we define how we are going to solve that. But everyone else who's going to use it is just going to call add numbers and pass two numbers, and they get the result. So let's dissect a Java method and see what parts it's made of. So to start with, we just went over the access modifiers or access types. So a method must have an access type: public, protected, package, and private are the four possible choices here. So when it's public here, it means add numbers can be accessed from within a class, from within the directory, from within a subclass, and also from the outside of the world, right? So this should give us some hint about about public makes things accessible outside of the world, and that's one of our problem right now, is we cannot read the values from the person class. The next section of a method is a return type. Every method should have a return type. Few of the return types example are integer, a string, void, reference. So void is a very special return type because it's not actually a type. Void says is this method is not going to return anything. So it doesn't have a type, it's just void. So when your function doesn't return anything, you have to specify that by writing void. So in this case, x plus y returns a result, which is the sum of both of them. And that result is of type integer. That's why we have it as integer. But let's say if this method was to print the value of x and y, then this method won't return anything. It will just print something and then exit. So in that case, you don't have a return. So you write void instead of integer. Third component of a Java method is add numbers. Well, add numbers is name actually. So every method must have a name. It is recommended to have a very meaningful name, so that just by reading the name you can find out or you can guess what this method must be doing. As an example, let's say square root. That's a simple example. So you exactly know what that method is going to do. Is going to give a square root of a number, or area of a circle could tell you that, okay, if you provide some parameters, that method will give you area of a circle. So a name should be very intuitive. Most of the time in Java, method names are verbs. They represent some action. The next component of a Java method is parameters. Now, we kind of looked at it because we saw this in our constructors. Parameters can be none. So in that case, there won't be any int x, int y. It will just be a open and close bracket. There could be one parameter, or there could be many parameters. You can have 2, 3, more than that. It's not recommended to have a lot of parameters in a method. It just makes it very complex. So that's the parameter list. Parameters are a way to pass values to your methods, and then you can work on those values. The next component is a derived component of Java method, which is a unique signature, which means a combination of name and what parameters it take. So that's a unique signature that a method has in a class. And at the end, it has a body. So body is the place where we write all our logic and program to use the parameters and return a result, perform an action. So that's called the body. It's between the two curly brackets. Now, we also saw unique signature in our constructor because we had two constructors, remember? One without parameter and one with parameters. They both had same name, but they had different signature because one had no parameter, other had two parameters. So this is important is because unique signature allows us to overload a method. So it means we can have add numbers, and instead of integer, we can have a double x and double y, right? So we'll have same method name, but now it's doing a different job. It's adding doubles rather than integers. So now when we know what a Java method is, let's go ahead and write some methods of our own. Right? So everyone, let's open our person class and let's write these three methods. Let's write these three methods together. So you all can see my screen, and so after the second constructor, let's write our three methods. So one of them is public. The reason why it is public is because we want to access it from class object. Let's give it a return type is string, and then let's give it a name. So what is this method going to do? So this method is going to return a full name of this person. So get we'll call this get full name. So if you want to know what the name of this person is, you just call this method and it will give you the full name. And what should it return? It returns a string. So let's create a string. Call it full name is equal to first name of Joe or whatever this person is, plus we add a white space and then last name, and then we return this full name, right? So what we did here is we created a full name object of type string, and whatever is the person's first name, whatever is the person's first name, use that, add a space to it, and then add a last name to it. So we have concatenated all of them together. So we should expect our result to be first name, and we should have a space now, and then have a last name. Remember earlier when we were printing the name, it wasn't printing a space. It would just print Joe regular, just like a one word. So let's write another method. Even this is public. It should return a string. And what should it return? It should return a date of birth. So remember, we are printing three things for this person. We are printing the name, we are printing date of birth, and we are printing address, right? So we write three methods to do that. In this case, when we do a date of birth, we create a string object, dob is equal to, how do you want to have the date of birth as? So let's say, let's do the day first, day of birth, right? And then we have a forward slash, and then followed by a month of birth, forward slash, followed by the year of birth, and then that's it. Now we have the date of birth, we return dob, right? So if we want to find out this person's date of birth, we just call joe.get the date of birth and we get the date of birth, right? Next is address. String get address, and we return, as we already have the address stored, we don't have to do anything. So we just return the address as user has provided. So everyone good so far? Anyone still writing? Let's wait for a few seconds while everyone is getting done, and while we wait. So what we did is, remember in class objects, this class here, we commented out three things. We commented out the place where we printed person's name, we commented out date of birth and address. So we want these three information from the Joe object, but we can't access it because these are all private. So now what we did is we created methods to access them, and now we are going to call these methods and print them out. So if you are all done here, then let's go back to our class object implementation, and inside the main, let's do a system.out.println, and we'll say person name, and then we append. So append is plus Joe dot get name, get full name, right? That and then similarly system.out.println person dob is date of birth is Joe. Let's see, do we have anything like that? Yes, we do have. We just wrote that and we see it here now. Get date of birth. Similarly, we'll do system.out.println double quotes person address is Joe dot get address, right? So now we have these three things. We don't need these commented outlines. We can delete it. It just makes the code look clean. So when you have written all this, you can go ahead and run the program. and voila, here it is. We get the same things printed, but now observe Joe has a space in it. You can also observe our date format is earlier it was year and then followed by month followed by day, but now we have it followed by like day followed by month and then year. So, well, our address is still empty is because we have not specified an address yet. And then if you look at it, Joe does not allow us to specify any address. So that's another problem. We solved one. We keep solving one, and we've run into another. But the good thing is we're making progress, right? So far so good. Now anyone who's using our person class cannot abuse it anymore. They have to call. Only these functions are accessible to them, and when they call it, it is us who control how we want to print the name. you know we can put like maybe 20 20 spaces between the names first and last name. Who knows, we can do whatever we want because now we are in the control. We can print date in any way we like. We can do it month, date and year. So the good thing is now we are slowly gaining control of our own code, rather than earlier it was given away. So let's anyone still writing? All of you got the same result?
I think I only didn't get that Joe regular. I I don't know.
You did not get that?
I only got Joe.
You didn't get the regular part of it, like the
Mm-mm.
last name. So if you go to your full name method, um, okay. So in your constructor, did you write this dot last name?
Um, this dot. No. Yeah,
Yeah,
I did.
you did.
No.
Okay. So the reason why we need this, I
Yeah.
intentionally picked this example. So our parameter name is same as our member variable name, right? So see the last name here is exactly same as the parameter name. So if you don't write this, what the program will do is it will take the value of last name and it will assign to itself. But what I wanted to show was if that's the case, when your parameter name is same as method, like member variable name, then you say this dot name, uh, last name. So
Oh, okay.
what it says is, uh, take the past value and assign it to the member of the class, not to itself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So now when you run it, you will get the same result.
Yeah, I got the same thing.
Awesome. All right. So let's move on. So we did this, and we got a result like such, and now the name is formatted as first and last name with a space in the middle. Date of birth is date, month, and year. Address is not null, so it means it has a valid value which is empty. So no one has assigned anything rather than saying, "Oh, it's nothing, it's invalid." So that's some progress, but we still are not able to update the address, right? So let's see if we can fix that problem. But before we do that, there's some fun exercise, right? Let's talk about it. We'll not really write it. You all can write it after the session is over. But let's talk about it. And as an example, what will you do to print name in last and first format, like last space first? So let's start with Grace. Do you want to try to answer this? How would you? What would you do to print the name in last and first format? Grace? I, Zane, do you want to give it a try?
Okay.
So,
Just
I
like
think she
wait.
said
Do we
something
want
in
to?
the comments.
oh, okay.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, Zane, maybe then
Uh,
wait, hold on.
all right.
I'll have a question for you. So, Kumar, can you read what's in the comments? I can't see it. I have to exit the
She said print ln.
print ln. No, that's not exactly right. Gazin, do you want to give it a try?
Well, we could just switch first and last name in the get full name method.
Correct. That's absolutely right. We just need to switch first name and last name when we implemented previously. So what it is, this is to show is now we are in control. We can print out name the way we want it, and just by going and changing the method. Okay, Hali, the next one is for you. What will you do if you want to print only first or last name?
You could comment out the other name.
That's right. You will comment out the other name. You will print only one. Next question is for Edward. What will you do to print? Well, that should not be the name, but date of birth in such a format. Instead of /, you would like to have a dash.
It said that I should log in with that card.
Yeah, you got a dash between the dates.
Yeah, so when we print the date of birth in the implementation, we go and replace the / with a hyphen, and then also instead of printing, I think we are doing date right now. So go and make it to month followed by date. All right. So next question for Nate. How would you modify the code to print time of birth? So remember, our person class has a time of birth, and we're not doing anything with it. So what would you do if you want to print the time of birth? Nate, any suggestions?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Do you mean like we have an hour of birth listed?
Yeah, hour of birth. So if you want to print that hour of birth, what would you do?
Could we just add it in to where we like said string date of birth equals? Could we just add it in before the day of the birth?
No, I mean we should not make it part of the date of birth, but just print it separate. Like if you want to do that.
Will we just make another public string that's just our time of birth, like
Yeah,
TOB?
I think that's an approach that will work. Also, the method could also be, instead of public string, it can also be an integer or something of that kind. But either one will just work fine. But yeah, that key point here is that we'll add just a new method and get the work done.
Okay.
So next is for Sam. So what would you do? How would you modify the code to print a 0 if person was born before noon, else print 1? So let's say you want to find out if the person was born before afternoon or after the afternoon, which is 12 p.m. and later.
Yeah.
So how would you do that? What would you change in the person class to let you do that?
You could. I don't know. You could use like an if statement, I guess.
Well,
But
we have not covered if yet.
Yeah.
So hold on to that. Yeah, but even if you use the if statement, how would you change the class to allow this to happen? Like from the person like class objects, how would you
Yeah.
access it?
You could. I don't know, actually. Yeah, I don't know.
So remember when, as Nate rightly said, is to print time, we'll add a method, right? So similarly, first thing we would do is we'll make a method which returns an integer, and then inside the method we can have any logic. We can write if, else, whatever, and we'll name the method as public int was born before noon, right? So if anyone calls that method will either return a 0 or either return a 1 based on what time the person was born, right?
Mm-hmm.
So inside that method, we can either write if, or we can just divide the time by 12, and if the result is 1, I mean, if it
Okay.
is 12 or more, it's going to be 1. So we can achieve the same thing. So that's implementation detail, right? The learning here is to write a new method which can just return a 0 or 1. And then now you see the power of methods is you can have so many different ways to implement it. But the person who's going to use your method does not have to know. They don't have to know whether you used if to find if the person was born before noon or afternoon, or did you just do a simple math of division by 12, right? So that's why methods are very powerful. They abstract the details and makes life very simple. Okay, moving on to void methods. So if you would remember, we talked about every method has a return type, and void is a special case wherein there's nothing to return. So when that's the case, we tell Java that, hey, it's a void method. It's not going to return anything, because if you have a return type, let's do an experiment. So let's write this code again, not again, but let's write this code together. But before you do that, let's change something. We'll revert the change, but just for the sake of learning. So let's delete string from here and then save it and see what the error is. Java will right away say it's an invalid method declaration. It does not have a return type. So it says, oh, your method doesn't match any signature. The name of the method is not matching with the class name, which means it's not a constructor. So it must have a return type. Let's say we do a void. By void, what we mean is, oh, this method is not going to return anything. And then we're actually returning something. So Java will say, you are telling me that this method is not returning anything while you're trying to return something. So I'm not going to compile. So it won't compile unless we fix it. Let's say if we make it integer, but we're returning a string, Java is going to say, hey, your method returns integer, but you're returning a string. That's not allowed. You can't do that. And when we do string, Java is happy. Life is good, right? So so that little fun experiment. Now let's write modifier program and write few more lines of code. So everyone, you can replicate what I'm doing. A public, and now as we said, we're going to look at void methods. So they're not going to return anything, void, and then we'll say, what are these methods for? So these methods are for solving this problem here. Is now we have this Joe object, but we can't set anything in it. Well, because of constructor, we can set the name, but we can't set the date of birth. We can't set time of birth. We can't set address. So what's the point, right? So now we're going to solve that problem. And so we're going to create functions or methods that allow a user to change things, right? So we'll say set, let's say, set full name. So this will allow a user to set a full name to this person object. And of course, the full name has a first name. Let's just call it first. There's a typo. And then string last, right? And then we'll say whatever the user is providing, save that value in the private variable first name. Similarly, last name, save the provided last name into our last name variable. Now this is it. It is setting, and user has provided us with those parameters. We have set our parameters with those values, and we don't do anything after that. We're not returning anything. So in the case when we're not returning, we write void and see how it is not complaining. If in the method above, if you comment out the return statement, save it, it's going to complain that, hey, you're not returning anything. But in this case, it's not complaining because there's a void. Okay, so now let's go ahead and write another method. It's of type void. And what is this used for? It should be used to set date of birth. So let's call it set date of birth. Right? And what all do we need as part of date of birth? We'll need a day of birth, and it's of type integer. We don't want people setting like float date of births, right? Makes no sense. Integer month, and then integer year. When user is providing us all of that information, we save that within the class. So we say day of birth is the day, while month of birth is the month, and year of birth is the year. So now we have allowed people to set two things. The remaining third is the address. Public void set address string address, right? And then we say address is equal to address. Now there's a problem again, is because what we're doing is, well, our parameter name matches the property name of the class. So if we do this, what will happen is when the user provides an address, this is saying take that address and assign it to itself. So you want to tell Java, hey, don't do that, assign it to this object's member variable. So that's why we write this. So now once we have done this, all of you, you have written this. Anyone still writing?
I'm almost done.
Okay.
Also, I have a question.
Yes.
In like an equal statement, does it matter which one you put first? Like, does it matter if you did day of birth equal day or day equals day of birth?
No, that matters. If you do day equal to day of birth, date of birth, is what you're doing is you are updating the value of this variable to whatever is in the member variable, which is, if you look at our constructor, it's 1. So what you're doing is you're setting day to 1, and then that means nothing because, I mean, so you lose the information that the user has provided.
Yeah. So you need to. So basically, the first one's always being set to the second one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So as this is an assignment operator, its precedence is first it'll evaluate the right side, and then whatever is the result, it'll go and assign it to the left. Right. So when there's an assignment operator, everything to the right is assigned to everything to the left.
Okay.
Right. You can interchange the order of these things. You can kind of do that, and that's still fine. Doesn't matter. Right.
Okay.
It's going to be the same thing, but you can't flip those variables. All right. Any more questions? I hope everyone has written so far. So let's go to class object and let's see if we can change anything now in Joe. So Joe dot do we? Oh yeah, now I can see. I can change the address. Is I can do 1000 result. Is that the right spelling? I don't spell that. Change to. Okay. Irvine, California, right? And then let's change something else. Let's change the date of birth. Let's say that Joe was born today. So today is 27th May, 27th. This month is May is 5, and the year is 2020. So we say that Joe is born today, and Joe dot. Do we want to change the name? We don't want to change the name. We have already given it a good name. But if you feel like you want to change it, you can go ahead and change it by calling set full name. Just for sake of practice, let's just do it. Let's change it to Harry Potter. How about that? And once you have done all this, you can run your program. And here it is. It prints name as Harry Potter, even though the constructor was regular Joe. Just because we called the method to update it, it printed that. And then we're printing date in this fashion, which is day, first, month, and year. So that's what it's doing. It's printing today's date, and it has an address now. So we have made some progress. Is instead of now directly updating values of Joe, anyone who's using the person class has to call methods. But have we achieved everything that we want so far? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting an error. I can't for the Joe.set date of birth. I can't get the day. It keeps showing as a red line.
So in your person class, go to set date of birth.
Yeah.
And then you have, like, do you have the same way declared there in day, comma, int month, int year?
Yeah, I have a
same thing, right? And then when you write like number 27, you don't have to write day. It's actually the IDE that puts it. Just write 27, comma 5, comma 2020.
Oh, okay. I kept writing day. Okay.
Yeah, no. This is IDE is trying to be helpful here, and it's saying whatever number you put here should be like the day, because in the method we have it as day. See?
Okay.
So it is just taking that and trying to help here. That month is 5 and year is 2020. So, but that's a good error to run into. What it proves is you can't assign anything you feel like. It has to be an integer, right? So you can't assign string. So that's good. So what methods have done is they have restricted the user to assign only certain allowed values, right, which is good. But is it all what we need? Maybe not, because we can have a negative date and it'll still work. If you run this, it'll have a negative date, which is still wrong. So far what we have done is we have limited the access, but we are not verifying what user is sending is right or not. So the question is, okay, okay, before we jump to that, let's resume to...
Sorry, I just have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
So for the Joe.set date of birth,
Mm-hmm.
I never specified that anywhere, but it still worked, because in the print line one, I have person date of birth is Joe.get DOB.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I set it as a void, I said Joe.set date of birth, like I wrote it out. So how is that still working?
Come again. So what you have done is you did not specify this line.
No. So in the print line,
Okay.
down, and this is, down there, I put like how you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did the same thing as you. So how does it print it out as Joe.set date of birth if it's never specified to print it as a line?
So you, in here you're getting person DOB and then Joe.get DOB, because do you have your double quotes end here and then a plus sign?
No. Everything works. I'm just wondering why. Because I never wrote the Joe.set date of birth as a string. So how does that still print?
You didn't. You wrote this, right? Line number 8. You did that, right?
Yeah, line number 8. I have that. Yeah.
Okay, and whatever number you have specified here is the same thing that got printed here, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and your question is why? How is it printing that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good question. Now we go back to person, and then in person we see what are we doing in this method, the set date of birth. So when a user provides these details, we take them and we assign them to our member variables. So remember the very top, these are the properties of this person class. So person has first name, last name, blah blah blah, these details. And what we are doing is we are assigning those details the value that the user has provided. So when you from class object you specify day as 27, this method gets called, and this day, this actually becomes equal to 27. And what we're doing here is we are
okay.
saying date of birth is equal to day, so that date of birth becomes 27.
Okay, yeah, I get that now.
Right. So what Java does is when you call a method, it will replace all these member variables with the value that you have passed. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how these values get assigned. And then when you do a print, like get date of birth, whatever values are stored in them, they get printed. Right. So that's how that's working. Any more questions? All right. So let's move on. So we did this change in the main. See how we well, we gave it a different, but in fact, can anyone tell me what happened on this day of birth, the date of birth, 31st July 1980?
Sorry, what was the question?
Question is anything remarkable that you all can think of happened on this day, which is July 31st, 1980?
Oh, I don't
It
know.
was, it's arguably the date of birth of Harry Potter, the character from the Harry Potter series. So it's not written anywhere. People, like some people have done research and inferred that this day Harry Potter was born. Just so I think
How do they know?
when it was Harry Potter's 31st birthday or something, it fell on October, like July 31st or something. So it means he would have been born in this date. So there's you can read about it. It's pretty interesting. But in the book, in the book nowhere it's specified. It's just a guess people have done. All right, so we all got this kind of a result, something similar. We're in Roosevelt, not in Universal City, but and now we understand how all this happened. So the question is, what happened there? We provided regular Joe, but it printed Harry Potter, and well, we know because we set the full name, so we modified the value. Similar to constructor, there's something called as method overloading, which means you can have two methods for the same name, but different parameter list. So in this example, you can see the set date of birth that we wrote was all three integers, day, month, and year. But how about if you want to set the date as let's say instead of June or like 7, 6, or 7, you want to say June or July, or instead of 5, you want to say May. You can't do that. So let's try to work on that a little. Let's go back to our program, and if you look at set date of birth, I'll just copy it. You can just observe if you want. And if I try to write here May, not going to work. It's going to complain that, hey, the required type is integer and I'm providing a string, so it's not going to work. So in such cases, a method overload comes into picture. What overloading means is we're assigning more work to the same method, right? So what is that extra work that we are assigning? We're assigning is, instead of integer, accept string as a parameter. So let's see how it can be done. So as it is overloaded, it means it's the same method that has additional responsibility now. So for the most part, signature is going to be same. Public void set date of birth. The same name, but now the parameter is going to be different. Integer day. We're still giving day as a number, but we're doing month as a string now, right? And then integer as an year, right? So what do we do? So let's just print out what the month was provided by the user, right? Because right now we are not able to consume the month. Our month of birth is integer, but user has provided a string, so we can't use it. So for now, let's just print it. Print line overloaded method called with month as month, right? And then we still update the day. We consume the data that we have. Day of birth is equal to year. I saw all of you write that, and we'll see how this overload method works. Anyone still writing? All right, so now we have added a method to accept the month as a string. So we'll see. So now in our list, we'll see there are two date of births. One is taking all integers, the other one is taking a string in the middle. So we'll use that. Let's say the date of birth is still 27th, it's today, but it's month of May, and year is 2020. We'll save this. Once you're done, you can run it. In fact, okay. What should we do is, if you all have run it, go ahead and comment out the line above it. Let's not call that a method. Just call one method and run it again. So you all can, are you all getting the same result?
Yeah, I got a 1.
Okay, 1, right? So key point here is that overload method was called, which means Java decided to call this method rather than that method. And how it decided that? It decided based on what parameters we have passed. We didn't tell it anything. We just passed the parameters and it made its own decision. So that's the power of overloaded methods. All right.
Sorry, I didn't get I got an arrow on May.
You got an error in May. So in your person,
yeah, when I wrote out May.
Okay, and your May is in double quotes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to your person class and look at the set date of birth, and your month is a string.
Oh, that's okay. My bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So run your program, and hopefully you'll get something similar.
I got the same thing.
Okay. Okay. So we modified this. Well, this is a Harry Potter example, so it says July, but it doesn't matter. So question is, what happened to the month? Why is it 1? Anyone? Like unmute yourself and any suggestions?
It's just the default.
And where did the default come from?
We set it in our parameter.
We set it in the constructor.
Sorry, constructor.
Perfect. Okay, so that's where it came from. Why did it not change? Because in the set date of birth method, we didn't do anything for July. We just whatever the second month, the month parameter is, we just print it out. We don't use it. That's why it just stays default. All right. So now this is a fun experiment. We'll not do it together. You guys at your end replace that July in double quotes the whole thing, double quotes and July with null, just null, and save it, run it, and tell me what you get.
Where do we write null?
Instead of May, well, okay, let's
Oh,
write it together.
okay. Do we
So-
write null with quotation
But-
marks? No.
No, without quotation marks. So
Okay.
just write null, just like that.
It just says overloaded method called with month as null.
Okay. Go back to person,
Okay.
and then in the method here where it says where you print the line, and at the end there's month.
Yeah.
So do a month.toString. We'll learn about this later on, but for now let's just write it that way
Okay.
and run the program.
Now it gives an error.
Damn. Okay. How about everyone else?
I got the same
You got an error, right?
thing.
Okay. Anyone getting a different result? I hope everyone gets the same.
I got
So
one again.
come again. You got the same error.
I got one again.
You got one
Okay.
again. Is your null inside double quotes?
No.
And in the person class, go to set date of birth, and then do you have month.toString at the end of it?
I'll add toString.
You okay? So add that and run it.
I got an error.
You got an error, right? Okay, so everyone got an error. I got an error as well. Well, the good thing is we got an error. What means is Java is not accepting null as a parameter. It won't run the program. It is saying, hey, you are passing an invalid parameter, right? So that's one good thing. Let's change it back to May. Save it, run it. And there it is. We get no error. So what did we learn from this is when you have a method, then if a user is passing wrong, invalid parameters, then a method can throw an error, right? So that's a key learning because you're going to use that going forward. Okay, but before we get there, let's resume. While we're on methods, let's look at a different type of method. So far, we saw methods that are public. We saw methods that have a return type. We saw methods that are void, which don't return anything. Now let's look at something called as static methods. So static indicates, by definition, static indicates the particular member belongs to a type itself rather than to an instance of the type. Which means, what it means is, somehow these definitions, they sound very complicated, but then if you really look at it, it's very simple. What it is saying is a static type belongs to itself rather than instance. So when we make a Joe object is an instance of person class, right? An object is an instance of the class. So what it says is a static belongs to the class and not to the object instance, a class instance, right? So what do you mean by that is when we wrote get date of birth or set date of birth or get address, set address, we were able to access that by doing Joe dot the method name, which means we could do that is because those methods belongs to the instance of that object, right? But static is something which doesn't belong to the instance of the object. It belongs to the class of the object. We'll look at an example and that will make it easy to understand. So let's modify our person code and then we write that one, like 3 lines there. You can follow me while I write that. So we'll say that this is a public because we want to access it from outside world. static, right? String, because this method is going to return a string. Get class author. So you want to create a method which says who wrote this class, right? So return. You can write your own name, or in this case, I'll just write bytes and bots. So it just says, if someone comes asking, hey, who wrote this class? And then it should return bytes and bots. Now, why do we need this to be static? One of the reasons is because no matter how many instances you create of this class, there's only one class, right? It's just different objects you can create. So who wrote that one class is this author, right? So in such cases where you want a common information across all your class used, and you do that. So when you come to this person class, wait a minute, did we write it at the wrong place? Yeah, I think we wrote it at the wrong place. So cut that, go to person, and at the very end of the person, we write that. Sorry for this confusion. So at the very end of the person class, go ahead and write this method, public static string get class author. And this is just going to return the name of the person who wrote the class. So you can go ahead and write your own name or just write bytes and bots. But once you have done that, let's come back to our playground here. And so far we observed that we do joe.setAddress and all these things, and they have worked. Now let's try to get author for this. Joe.get, there's no author, right? So we have this thing here, get class author. We don't see that. We don't see that here. It's giving an error. Why is it giving an error? An error is because this method is of type static. So when Java looks at this, let's compare this. So method right above it doesn't have static, but this one has static. So when Java is looking at the method above here, it says, oh, it doesn't have a static. Let me make it available to the instance of the class. If it is a static, then it is not available to the instance. So Joe is an instance of class person. So as this method has a static, it won't be available as part of Joe. So that's the case. And how is it available? So the way it is available is as part of person. It is, right? So you don't need an instance. You don't need to create an object to access a static method. You can do it by just calling by the class name. So let's print this out for experiment's sake. Print line, and author is the author of the class. And this, you would use something like this when you want to copyright your class or something, so that no one else can accidentally make a copy of it and start using it. So you run it, and after the run, it prints out author as bytes and bots. Right? So everyone got this?
Yeah, I got that.
Okay. So also, while we are on this, replace the May month in quotes with number. So you just replace it with 05 again, or just 5. So because we're going to try something else next. So run this, and now instead of 27.1, you will see 27.5. And then now we have the author of the class being printed as well. So we're making slow progress, but we're making progress. We're building, each step is building upon the another one. Any questions so far? All right. So what we just did is, to summarize, we changed the month to a number again, and we wrote a static method. We did all this, but do we understand how methods get called? really. So let's see if we can find out if our understanding is right or not. So next is how method calls work, right? So let's say there's a method which takes string as a parameter, and let's say it has three variables, a, b, and c, and then it prints hello. So print hello is another function on the top right here, and the only thing it does is it just prints hello. The next is print total, which takes two parameters, 10 and 20, and in this case it'll call this method here, which is print total, and it just prints the total of x and y. Whereas third is a method called add, takes x and y parameter and returns the result in C, and then we can print the result as C, right? So we look at this one method which is calling three different methods, and how does that work internally? How does Java know where to go and run what? So let's run through it as Java program would do. So step number one, what it will do is it will create a variable. Somewhere in the memory, it will reserve a space. How many bytes? Integer is 4 bytes. So it'll reserve 4 bytes. It will call it A and put number 4 in the in that region. Second is I'll create a variable B of type integer, value 5. C is 0. Then it goes to that line. It says, oh, print hello. It's a method. So it'll look everywhere in the program. Where is that method? And it'll find it, and it'll jump to that method as step number 5. And it'll start executing whatever is between the two curly brackets. Step 6 is it'll print hello. And then the moment curly brackets close, it comes back. See how the return type is void? So it's not going to return anything. It just comes back to where it left. Essentially, it returns back to after the semicolon, and then moves on to the next statement 8. And here it says, oh, this is also a method. Let me find where it is. It looks into the entire code, and it'll say, oh, I found it. It makes a jump. Step number 9. And step 10 is whatever parameters have been passed is put in the method's x and y variables, and those are printed out. Comes back to after the semicolon. Step 12 is it'll say, this add is a method, but it's not going to return something, and whatever it returns, that has to be assigned to C. Remember the assignment operator? Its precedence is first it'll evaluate whatever is it on its right. So it'll try to evaluate that, and it'll see that as a method. So it goes to searches for it, finds it, and then the result is returned. So there's an easier way to learn this, and let's do that together. So let's debug in Java, right? So debugging will show us what is happening internals of it. So to debug, let's so on your right next to the numbers, line numbers, if you have in your IDE, like do a click, and that should place a red dot on a line. So what we are going to do is we're going to debug the set date of birth method, right? So to do that, go to run, and instead of run, you do a debug class object, right? Everyone with me so far?
Sorry, how did you get the red line to pop up?
So anywhere in this gray column here, like where the line number is, you can go and just do a click, not on the number, but right next to it. Just do a click. So if you click on it, it'll put a red dot. If you click on the red dot, it'll take it out. Right? And then go to run, and then do a debug. So when you do the debug, you'll see the program has stopped actually. It has stopped here. And it is showing you. Did that just wait a minute? Let me run this again. I think I didn't save it. Okay, so stop. debug. Yeah, so when your program is at halt, you will see it shows you the current state of variables. And then there's a Joe variable. It says person and then at the rate or some number, could be 7, all 7s are different. But if you expand it, you'll see first name is Joe, last name is regular, and you look at the address. The address is right because we are setting it there. But the date of birth is still year 2000, month and day of birth is 1 because we have stopped the program right here. We didn't let it go ahead. So now let's debug it. So let's see what happens. What will program do once it reaches here? So to do that, there's something called as, like, if you look at these little icons on the top, one of them it says step into, or you can press the F7 key, the function 7 key on a keyboard, and it will take you inside of that method. There's another way to do that. If you're not able to do it, you can go back to there, go to person, and then you can put a debugger there, right? So it will come and stop here for you. So everyone with me so far? So now the program has gone, it was stopped here, but now it has moved on and it has come to this method here. And you can see that now day is equal to 27, month is 5, and year is 2020, right? So whatever you passed as parameter has been received here, and now the program is going to go line by line within this function. So to do that, you can press F8 or step over. So if you do that, you'll see how and then how date of birth is 1, but day is 27, and when you go to next step, you'll see that date of birth is 27 now. Right? So that's how Java is working. Now it sees a closing bracket, comes back, it's out back into the main. So, and then you can resume your, so you can do a resume, program has done. There should be a, well, there should be an output. So I hope you all were able to debug the program. Any questions? Anyone who couldn't do that debugging procedure yet?
Wait, so we have to click the step into and then the other one?
No. So what you can do is you put a breakpoint. So this red dot is called a breakpoint, and when you debug, then the program stops there. And then if you want to go inside what is happening of the set date of birth, then you do a step into, which is key number F7. But if you don't want to go in and see what's happening, you just want to go ahead next line, then you can do a step over. So it'll just go to the next line, which is set full name. So either you can go in and see what's happening, or you can just walk through.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So why debugging is important? So debugging is important because sometimes our logic gets a little complicated, and we want to find out what is going on one step at a time, and that's when debugging is very helpful. Also, it shows us how our program is jumping around in the whole set of source codes. So far, we have just 2 files, but just imagine the projects which have like hundreds and hundreds of files. It's very hard to find out what's going on. So debugging is very helpful. Now, coming back to this one experiment we did earlier, is we had replaced the month with null. You all remember that, right? And then we all got that error, which is null pointer exception. So let's try one more thing. In your main function, at the end here, let's print out a mathematical equation, a very simple one, system.out.println, and just let's call it result is equal to, let's say, 100 divided by 0. Save it. So now what happens when you divide a number by 0? Anyone?
Undefined.
Undefined. Nice. Definitely yes. So let's run it. What happens when we run this? Oh, there it is. It says arithmetic exception, divide by 0. You can't do that, right? So there's an error. So now we saw that Java has its own way to tell the user that, hey, there's an error, there's something wrong with your program. It may not tell you right away when you write something like null or when you divide by 0. It won't tell you right there. But when you run your program, it's going to throw an error saying either null pointer exception or arithmetic exception. So the question is, what is an exception? Okay. So exception is some anomaly in the regular flow of the program. Something went wrong, and Java tells you that by throwing an exception. It's a very detailed topic. We don't have to get into those details, but you can read about it if you have time after this session. It's a very powerful tool if you use the right way. But if you use the wrong way, it becomes annoying. Every time you run the program, it's throwing an exception. Then the whole fun of using the program is gone. But it can definitely be useful when users give wrong inputs. So you can't proceed further. You can't proceed further with a person without a date of birth. If that is so important. So you want to end your program right there because you don't have critical information. So far, what we have learned about methods is methods are procedural abstraction, which means they hide the implementation details, and they just get the job done. Area of a circle will give you the area of a circle without you knowing how the area is being calculated. Method has an access modifier, a return type, name, and parameters, and a body. Right. So access modifiers are of 4 types: public, protected, package, and private. We'll be mostly dealing with public, but it's good to know other access modifiers. Return types are void if the method does not return a value, or a certain type. That type could be integer, string, boolean, could be anything. But whatever it is, it should be the same type as whatever you write after the statement return inside your body. Method name should be meaningful and clearly state what it does. It should not be, public int x or public int do something. It is very confusing. What does it mean? It means nothing. It should be something like add numbers or get area of a triangle or get address, something which is meaningful. It should be a verb than anything else. Methods can have 0 or more parameters, similar to constructors. Method body is code between the open and close curly brackets. Null is a special value used to indicate that a reference is not associated with any object. So there's no value assigned to a object or a variable, then it is null essentially. Static keyword indicates that method or member belong to the type rather than instance, which means if our method names have static in them when we declare it, then they won't be available through object instance. They'll be available through class. As an example, when we want to say who's the author of a class, then we would do something like that, or copyright or something similar. Static methods don't need object instance to be called. And methods can throw exception. That's a key point. And then we have to be careful about it and use it very wisely. So far what we have seen is we had an object. We could change everything in it. From there, now we have an object. We can change only through methods. So we have come this far. But we saw that we can still go ahead and give wrong inputs to our methods. Like we can have a negative date. We can have a month is beyond 12. So can we do anything about that? Can we not? Can we restrict user from sending wrong information to our methods? And the answer is yes, we can do that. And exception is what helps us do something similar of that kind. There are other ways to do it, but this is one way. And then let's quickly try it out. So let's see how exception works in Java. So go to person class everyone, and remember we had this problem with we're trying to solve is our day, month, and year should be valid, right? There should not be some random number or whatever it is. So let's put some logic around it. So let's say so we have not covered if so far, but for sake of experimenting this, let's just write what I'm typing here, and then we'll eventually cover it. So if month, we're saying if month is less than or equal to 0, which means you can't have month 0 or you can't have a negative month, or if the month is greater than 12. So if your month is less than or equal to 0, or if it is greater than 12, then that's a problem for us. So we throw an exception. We say throw, what do we throw is a new illegal argument. So if someone has passed wrong arguments, and we say month can only be between 1 and 12. If someone is sending, and then put a semicolon, if someone is putting a month which is outside of this range, we throw an exception. We say, hey, you can't do that. Let's check for the day. So if the day is less than or equal to 0, you can't have a day 0 or less than that. Or if day is greater than 31, no, you can't have day greater than 31 either. Throw an exception, which is new. Give me 1 second, sorry. It's an illegal argument exception, and they can only be 1 and 31. Sorry. So we have done that. So did you all write this?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's go to our class object.
Wait, but shouldn't they go after? Wait, does it matter or not? Wait, does it matter if they go after like the 3 like day of birth equals day, or can they go before?
These as we are so these should be before we update the internal variables, is because we are checking if the parameters are right before using them.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, if we use it and then throw an exception, then what we have done is we have modified the class and then we are throwing error. So our class is in the wrong state.
Oh yeah, it'll throw an error and it'll be like the wrong stuff.
Correct. So with exceptions, exceptions can be handled. So we are not handling it. That's why our program terminates. But there are ways in which you can absorb the exception. So in that case, what will happen is now your class has wrong information and your program is still running, right? So you would always want to throw the exception first. As soon as you see there's a problem, you throw an exception, right? So let's go to class object and let's put a -5 or put anything. Let's, we have put a lot of negative numbers. Let's put some month as 15 and let's run the program. There it is. We get an exception of type illegal argument exception. What does it say? Month can only be between 1 and 12. So we have 15, it won't work. Let's put something like maybe 0. Let's run it. Same. we're getting an exception. You can't have month outside of that range. Let's bring it back to 5. Let's put a day, which is maybe 50 day, which cannot be more than 31. Run it, and then it gives an error, right? So, but if it is in the range 27 is today's date, you run it, the program just works as expected. Oh, what happened? Divide by 0. We forgot to delete this one line at the end here. But that was very important. So we had this problem at the end of the program, and we were not seeing that, because what happened is every time an exception is thrown, Java terminates the program. So our program was coming to this point, and it was throwing an exception, and it would just end there. It won't even come and run beyond that, right? So anyhow, so now we have fixed that. We run it. So our program should run without a problem. There it is. So the date of birth is right. So what we have done is, through, well, did we take care of everything is a question. Is this enough? Because in the month of February, you can't have day more than 29, right? In a non-leap year, you can't have day more than 28 if it is a month of February. So, but the point here is that you got the idea that when we have methods to take parameters, then we can put these checks and bells and whistles. If you don't have these methods, then users can go ahead and just assign whatever they want here, which is so wrong. So methods give us a way to bring the control back to us. We are the one who decide what happens now. And with these exceptions, we have taken care of making sure that the parameters are coming in right. Right? So our person class is not perfect, but it is good enough, and it is in usable state. Right? And now we can go ahead and change whatever we want in it.
I had a question.
Yes.
So I was just thinking. So I tried like, so I was thinking about how February only has 29 days.
Mm-hmm.
So if I tried writing if like how we did for the months, I said if month is equal to 2, and then the 2 lines, I said day is greater than 29, and then throw the new illegal argument exception. It still didn't work. So I mean, I don't. There's an error coming up. So what would I do there?
Can I look at your screen?
Yeah.
But that's a very, I don't know if all of you followed the question. It's a very interesting question. The reason why it's very interesting is, see here in the example, just 1 second.
Yeah. So basically, so this works, right? But then I tried to add this.
Wait. I can't see your screen. What happened? I'm seeing myself. Okay, now I can see your screen. Okay. So yeah.
So I tried. So if month is equal to 2, which is February, I tried to say, okay, if day is 29, then you can say if month is birth is February. Then
yeah. So go back. Next scroll.
Not be more than 29. So if I wanted to do that, what else? How else could I do it?
So you got an error there, right? You're getting an error. The reason why you're getting an error is day is greater than 29. So because your day is always going to be 29. Well, not really. Wait a minute. So if your month is equal to 2, what it means is, so 1 equal to is assignment. So what you're doing is you are assigning number 2 to the month. So instead of 1 equal to, make it double equal to. So that's logical comparison. So what happens is when you do single equal to, then it means you have assigned 2 to month, and that is a successful operation. So it returns true. So it is true or day, which is always going to be, So month equal to 2 is always going to be true, because that's going to be successful assignment. So you have to have that. So now it should run.
Okay, wait, I need to change the one. Oh, now it's saying this. Like no matter what month I put.
Okay, so go back to your person. So the reason why is when it comes to this line number 62, it says if month is equal to 2, which is true, your month is 5, I guess, right? Or your day is more than 29. If either one of them is true, it isn't through an exception.
So then would I have to do this thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you're saying your month is February.
And it works.
Yeah.
And then yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So, okay, can stop sharing. In fact, that's the last slide in today's session. Is we end with exception.
We're about 10 minutes.
I can start a new topic today, but better we'll open it for question answers rather than starting something new, because the next section is very interesting. Let me give you a hint of what the next section is about, which we'll be covering next session, and make sure your IDs are, make sure your IDs are continue to work, because we'll be writing more program. And so how we have created our own class here, right? We say it's a person class and it has these many attributes, it has these constructors and these methods to access them. So similarly, what Java has done is Java has created its own set of classes, and it has made it available for us to use it. So instead of writing our own, we'll look at some of the classes that Java has given us out of the box, and we use it. As an example, string is a Java class, right? So if you just hover your mouse over the string, your IDE can tell you a lot about how the Java class has implemented, like how is this implemented. If you want to know more, you can right click on it and you can go to you can press the control key, I guess, and click on it, and then it takes you to where the class definition is, right? See, it is very similar to how we wrote our own class, public class person, right? And then if you go to string, you'll see Java has also written it as public class string. That's final. We'll talk about it later, but that's how all classes are. Even Java language has done the same thing as we have done. So we'll look at such classes and we'll see how powerful they are. We will look at, you all have heard of cryptography, like cybersecurity and all of those things. We'll look at how that is done, not in great detail, but we'll understand the fundamentals of it. We'll look at how cards are shuffled as an example. Yeah, cryptography, right? So cryptography is encryption. Yeah. So it's, as an example, whatever conversation we all are having, anyone who is not part of this group, if they happen to listen to us, they won't be able to understand what we are talking, because it'll all be encrypted and no one can understand that. So all that is possible through very simple classes that Java offers. So we look at that. We'll write our some of our own code as well, and we'll try to get some results. And there'll be a lot of quiz, and all this that we have done was a foundation for that. So have your IDs working, have your ideas working, and next time when we meet, come up with questions about how things work in daily life, and we can correlate to that.
At some point, I'd like to recognize those who ask a lot of questions and give them a trip to Disneyland.
That's a good idea.
Okay. All right. Okay. I wish that means, are you interested in Disneyland, or it's for kids? All right.
I think question answers are the best way to learn. Go in what I mean. Okay. All right, Zen.
Okay. Thank you.
So ask questions. Feel free to do that. Is because we all are here to learn. It's not that no question is insignificant. No question is stupid. Every question is equally important. A lot of times we all have some question we don't ask because we feel we ask later. But when someone else asks it, it clarifies it for everyone else. So you're doing not only a favor on yourself, but a favor for everyone, in fact. So feel free to do that. No one is judging anyone based on questions. All right, that's a way to learn.
All right, remember to do the survey. It's in the email, and I also copied the URL here. So remember to do that. Thank you. And PK, can you join? And you are welcome to. Can you stop the recording?
Okay, I'll stop the recording.
Okay.